Love staying informed? Subscribe now and get unlimited access to local news, weather, and sports for just 99 cents a month for your first 3 months at inforum.news/join. Read every story, listen to every podcast, and download the apps that keep you informed and on the go 24 hours a day. So head to inforum.news/join right now to subscribe. What are you waiting for? Get 3 months of local news for just 99 cents a month at inforum.news/join.
Welcome to Plain Talk, and I gotta say, things kind of worked out beautifully for the podcast. We canceled the Wednesday episode because I got sick. I got a horrendous flu, was flat on my back all week. Chad's doing the air quotes. I was sick, sir.
Sick.
I wasn't malingering at home. But then it turned out that our Lieutenant Governor, Tammy Miller, decided to announce her gubernatorial campaign and wanted to do an interview with us on Thursday. So I could have told you that we planned for this all along, but we didn't. It was a happy accident.
It's all a big conspiracy, Rob.
It's all a big
conspiracy
all right.
that you were sick yesterday.
That's my co-host.
Well, it's my pleasure to be able to help you out with your schedule.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's exactly what you were thinking, Tammy. When you drew all this up, was let's work this into Port's schedule. Yeah, right. Well, you announced you're in the race. Tell us why are you running for governor?
Well, thank you, Rob. Thank you, Chad, for having me this morning. It is an exciting day. So excited to announce the race. As you know, I am a very experienced, seasoned CEO, have a strong track record in business. I'm also a CPA. I know how to run organizations, get things done, know how to maximize dollars, attract talent, and deliver customer service. And I want to bring that private sector experience to the citizens of North Dakota. I also want to continue the great momentum that we have under the Burgum Miller administration. We have a lot of great work in flight, and I'd like to continue to build upon that as your next governor of North Dakota.
Lieutenant Governor Miller, I read your statement this morning, and frankly, it sort of read to me like generic Republican talking points running for governor in North Dakota. So I want to go in a little bit deeper into some of those things. Joe Biden's name came up a lot. You're running for governor. Donald Trump's name came up a lot. You said that President Biden's a socialist. At the same time, you said you want to eliminate income taxes. North Dakota's budget is 30% from the federal government. You can't eliminate income taxes without federal dollars rolling into the state. How do you balance those two things of coming across as anti-federal dollars coming into the state, but at the same time wanting to cut revenue from North Dakotans?
Actually, we want to eliminate individual income tax in the state of North Dakota. As you know, the state of North Dakota is doing very well. All of our cream cans are full and overflowing, and we need to return money back to the taxpayers. At the end of the day, it's their money.
But how do you do that if 30% of our budget is from the feds and you're saying you don't want federal dollars because it's socialist money rolling into the state, right? You can't take 30% of the budget, say we don't want that from the feds, and then also cut income taxes at the same time.
Absolutely. And I think everyone would like their federal income tax to be reduced as well. But at the end of the day, when the federal government is doling out the money, North Dakota needs to take theirs versus give it to other states.
One thing that when Governor Burgum announced that he wasn't seeking a third term, you sent out, and that was by the way, it was a very busy day because we got news that morning that Rick Berg was going to run for Congress, and then Rick Becker, excuse me, good goodness, Rick Becker was going to run for Congress, and then Governor Burgum made his big announcement, and then there's a lot of speculation. Kelly Armstrong had indicated he was maybe interested in the race. Of course, there was speculation about you. In amongst all that, you sent out a press release endorsing Donald Trump. And I thought, right away when I saw that, I thought, okay, she's running. Because why would you do that? Why did you think it was so important to do that immediately after Governor Burgum, within hours of his announcement not seeking a third term?
Really to share my views. I know the governor felt the same way, wanted to support the governor in supporting Donald Trump. And I firmly believe that Donald Trump is the best person to be our next president. in our country. If I look back to when President Trump was in office, I think about how great his policies were for the state of North Dakota when it comes to supporting energy and agriculture and protecting our prosperity and our freedom and our peace. He was so important to national security. And that is why I felt it was important to endorse Donald Trump and to make a strong statement about these overreaching regulations that are coming out of the Biden administration.
Tammy, North Dakota is producing more energy today under the Biden administration than they did under the Trump administration. Agriculture incomes have had back-to-back years of record highs. How does what you just said hold true if we're producing more energy under the Biden administration and farmers are doing better under the Biden administration?
That increase in oil production is only because of the great innovation in the state of North Dakota. It has nothing to do with additional regulation supporting the growth in the industry. It's innovation that's coming out of North Dakota. And when you look at agriculture, what a lot of individuals don't understand is the train wreck that's coming. If we continue on this path, soon farmers will not be able to fertilize their crops. They won't be able to spray their crops, and we won't be having these record production years with commodities moving forward. We have to stop this regulation.
Tammy, one thing is you've been, obviously you've been a prominent North Dakotan for a while, CEO of one of the largest electrical suppliers in the country, Border States Electric. Very happy to have, company we're all very happy to have in North Dakota. And you've been a part of the Burgum administration since 2020. You've been lieutenant governor for a little over a year now. Mm-hmm. But we don't know a lot about Tammy Miller on policy. Whereas we look at your opponent, Kelly Armstrong, and he has, he was a state senator, then he was a congressman, long voting record. We can look at a lot of things. We don't know a lot yet. So I guess just, can you run down some hot button issues? Where are you at on abortion, same-sex marriage? I mean, a lot of these issues that voters, perennially come up with these campaigns. Can you run down and just kind of tell us where you're at on them?
I would love to, but since a lot of voters may not know me, do you mind if I just take a moment to step back and share a little bit about my background?
Go right ahead.
Well, my hometown is Brockett, North Dakota, population 34. So we lived just a mile outside of town. Early in my life, we lived in a basement. My parents didn't have a lot of money. So the first 7 years of my life, we actually lived in the basement until they could afford to build the rest of the house. During that time, my grandfather had a small business called Miller Lumber. During that time, too, he was audited by the IRS, and I helped reconstruct those records when I was about 10 years old. And that's how I got interested in business and accounting. Shortly after that, my father and mother started a business called Miller Shopping Center on the Prairie. And as a teenager, that's where I worked. And as the daughter of the bosses, I got to do a lot of the good jobs like cleaning toilets and stocking shelves. And with our business being out in the middle of nowhere, we were often robbed. And we would protect our store with our shotguns until the sheriff came from Ramsey County. So that's a little bit about my background growing up. Then I went on to earn an accounting degree. I'm a CPA. I worked in public accounting and then went to work for one of my audit clients, Border States Electric. Kind of started at an almost entry-level position there as the accounting manager. And then over the course of 15 years, worked my way up to become the CEO, became the CEO in 2016, and was also named the board chair. From there, we had significant growth with Border States. And even with that growth, we maintained our corporate headquarters in North Dakota and are really proud to call North Dakota home for Border States Electric. The day after I technically retired from Border States Electric, I joined Team ND and am really proud to have had 4 years with Governor Burgum. We have accomplished so much, helping to grow and diversify our economy, to reduce the individual income tax, to continue to push back on the Biden administration overarching regulations. And we will keep this momentum going with a Tammy Miller governor. I am very, very excited to take North Dakota to the next level. And I really think we're just getting started.
So in your press release, you referenced one of your priorities would be parental rights. I'm a parent. I have a 7-year-old, and for the life of me, I can't figure out what rights I don't have in his life. We just had parent-teachers conference. I have access to his principal. I have access to his doctor. What are these rights and that you're going to give me as a parent in North Dakota during a Miller administration?
Well, we want to protect your rights as a parent. There are some things, though, that I think should be handled at a state level. We did have some transgender issues that came up as it related to sports. I think where we ended up was a great spot. As a parent, who would want their daughter to be competing against a boy in girls' sports? So I think some of those decisions, like that one, should be made at a state level, because those students will be competing across the state. And it would be very difficult if we had inconsistent rules, guidelines, laws across the state.
But is that you're saying that the state, so what are the parents' rights that you're referring to in your announcement that you would provide to a parent?
I think a lot of what you mentioned is exactly what we want to protect. Let's keep those decisions with the parents where they should be made, not at the government level.
One criticism, or I guess one, depending on your point of view, maybe it's not a criticism, of the legislature, is that it has spent a lot of time on issues like that, and some of them I will agree. I mean, some of them have needed policy making. We have to decide, how are we going to handle some of these situations. Others seem like kind of a waste of time, and I know even Governor Burgum at times has been critical of some of these bills, of these, and has vetoed some of them. Focus on books and libraries and things like that. Do you feel like the legislature is focusing too much time on those things, or what is your feeling about? I guess we'll call it culture war for lack of a better term.
Yeah, we have had some focus on culture wars during the last legislative session. I think we made good progress, and I think some of those matters have been resolved and are behind us. But at the end of the day, those are important matters to citizens of North Dakota and legislators, so I'm glad they were addressed. But I'm really hoping as we move into the next legislative session, we can focus more on growing our economy, eliminating the individual income tax, pushing back on the Biden administration. And one thing that I haven't mentioned is really promoting public safety. We really want to back the blue, brown, and the green, as we say, and help North Dakota become the most military-friendly state in the nation.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Rob.
I guess, how do we, are there specific policies in terms of, obviously I know you mentioned eliminating the income tax. That's prominent on the website. Beyond that, what are some, if you're elected governor, you head immediately into a legislative session, what's your agenda? Give us the bullet points.
Really growing and diversifying the economy. How can we continue to get government out of the way, focus on innovation, not regulation, to really grow our economy? As I go around the state and talk with business leaders, they say, keep North Dakota business friendly. North Dakota is a very easy state to do business in. Let's continue to promote and protect that. So again, that boils down to focusing on innovation for growth and diversification versus regulation. I also mentioned finishing the job on individual income tax. Our cream cans are full. We need to return some of this money back to the citizens of North Dakota. So I'd like to finish the job that Governor Burgum started on eliminating individual income tax in the state of North Dakota.
We've heard a lot about President Biden during this interview, but your opponent's Congressman Kelly Armstrong. What is different between you and Representative Armstrong, and why should Republican primary voters support you over, frankly, somebody who's more of a known quantity than you are to the voters of North Dakota?
Moving forward, we'll have plenty of time to compare and contrast myself with Kelly, but I think the overarching difference is I am a proven business leader. I have been a CEO for 14 years. I know how to balance budgets and maximize every penny in a budget. I know how to deliver good service, and I know how to grow. So I want to bring that skill set to the people of North Dakota.
Well, Tammy, I know that's all we have time for. I really appreciate you making yourself available, and looking forward to maybe a longer, more in-depth interview too as the campaign rolls on. So thank you.
Sounds good. I look forward to joining you again and getting around the state. And if you want, tune in to learn more about Tammy Miller at tammymiller.com. Thank you.
Hi there, my name is James Wallner. I produce and host the podcast Dakota Spotlight, a true crime podcast that tackles historical and unsolved crimes in the upper Midwest. Follow along with me as we search for a missing girl, attempt to solve a 45-year-old murder, and much, much more. That's Dakota Spotlight Podcast, anywhere you get your podcasts, or at inforum.com/podcasts.
All right, just finish up the interview with Tammy Miller, and I want to start by saying the one thing I struggle with, particularly when we're talking about primary campaigns, because when it's a primary campaign for a party's nomination, it's all red meat, right? It's basically the candidates preaching to the choir, and so they get maybe a little bit more vicious at times, or can, than a general election campaign, or maybe just vicious in a different way. I don't like it, and I want to distinguish some of the things that I'm going to say about what we're already seeing, even here at the dawn of Tammy Miller's gubernatorial campaign. I want to distinguish, I don't like some of the things that I'm seeing, but I really like the candidate. Like, I'm really interested in getting to know Tammy Miller. I think if she's elected governor, I think she could be a great governor. I understand why she's doing it, and it's all just sort of poll tested. You know, Joe Biden's a socialist. We're going to keep the woke liberals out of our schools and everything else. And I understand she's doing it because it works. I don't like that, basically campaigns for Republicans are just, whatever was on Fox News. That really bothers me. And I feel like it does. And the thing is, I feel like as this campaign goes on, it's going to get ugly. She's going to fire shots at Kelly Armstrong. Kelly Armstrong's going to fire back, or maybe Kelly Armstrong will fire first. I don't know. I think it's going to get ugly. I think these are two very, very interesting, very accomplished candidates, and we're not going to hear a lot about that, but we are going to hear a lot about bathrooms and sports teams and everything else.
Yeah, so I will be honest, I was excited to learn more about Tammy Miller in her announcement, and then I read her announcement and I learned nothing about how she feels about things. I mean, like the just spitting out talking points, parental rights, Second Amendment, all those kind of things. But then when you ask, like, what are the parental rights? There's nothing there. Other than that red meat talking points that you're talking about. And I believe she's an interesting candidate. I believe that she would have an interesting conversation about how she really feels about things. But I just feel like at this point, it's early in the campaign. It's a little cookie cutter in her statement. And again, I had a whole list of questions ready to go that all changed after reading her statement this morning. Yeah. Because it was just, I joked that it was like AI regurgitated generic Republican messages in there. But I mean, it was very clearly poll tested.
Right.
It's the same frustration, frankly, that I had with Burgum in 2016.
Right.
It's that, he campaigns on term limits and then does nothing during the sessions about term limits. I sort of feel like that's what we're seeing here too, is just like, I'm going to say one thing during the campaign, but it's not really.
Because of poll tests well. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's almost like getting elected is a separate job from governing, and that does bother me. Now, the thing is, we can complain about the candidates or the political consultants or whatever. They do it because it works.
Yep.
I mean, this works. I mean, the voters like this. You and I, who follow this stuff obsessively, are not the target audience for what Tammy Miller or Kelly Armstrong or any of the rest of these candidates are going to do. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know what to say about that.
I think she's a really intriguing candidate.
Yes.
I think that, one of the things I would have liked to ask her, if these are all these things that you'd like to do as governor, why didn't you talk about them as lieutenant governor, right? I mean, you had a place to talk about these things, and I don't recall her talking about these things.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to take it. When you're the lieutenant governor, that's not exactly the job, is to talk about Tammy Miller. When you're lieutenant governor, you sign up to do the governor's. So I don't want to take a shot at her. She has an opportunity now. She has an opportunity now.
It's 6 months that she was basically the de facto governor in the state.
Yeah, the thing is okay. The thing about that is and there may not be a lot of daylight between her and Doug Burgum. I mean, Listen, I think Doug Burgum was a good governor. Your mileage may vary. I think overall, I think he was a good governor for North Dakota. I've never liked his campaign tactics. And I think Miller's got the same team, and it's going to be the same campaign tactics. And I think that's really unfortunate because Miller could be a great governor. I wish she would talk more about herself. I wish all these candidates would. Although at this point in the race, she doesn't have a lot of incentive to put a lot of specifics out there, right? I mean, I kind of feel like her advantage over Armstrong right now, one of the advantages she has, is that she is a blank slate, right? She can sort of capture the voters' imagination and be kind of whatever they want her to be because she doesn't have a governing track record. She hasn't signed bills. She hasn't vetoed bills. Burgum kind of did the same thing in 2016 where he could just be this blank slate for the voters. Now, her, it's a little difficult because, she was in her predecessor's administration, so she's, for better or worse, has to carry some of that baggage. But for the most part, she's a blank slate. Kelly Armstrong's got a long voting track record. That's a good thing in that there's things in there he could brag about, but it's a bad thing because there's some complicated votes in there. I have a feeling we're going to hear about his vote to codify same-sex marriage in federal statute. I have a feeling that's going to be an issue in this campaign. The fact that Donald Trump, I got a text message as we were listening. It said, just saw Miller commercials really leaning into Trump. I don't know if those commercials are already on television. She's already got them on YouTube. They were part of her press release. I'm sure they're out on social media. But she is. I mean, she's leaning heavy into Trump. Well, Donald Trump at one point called for Kelly Armstrong to be primaried in Congress. So if you're leaning into Trump that much, those are the sorts of things that are going to come up. So I don't know.
Yeah, I heard from somebody this morning who read her statement and called her Mega Miller because she was leaning in so hard to that sort of messaging.
Yeah.
And again, I think that there seems to be a bit of a disconnect between the statement this morning and the way that she and Governor Burgum governed. And so I hope that she'll lean a little, because like you and I might disagree a little bit in terms of how good of a governor he was, but I think overall he's a decent governor. And so to sort of lean into that a little bit in the track record more than, Doug Burgum while he was governor never talked about parents' rights. As a matter of fact, I think that his staff was trying to defeat some of the bills on parental rights and some of the other stuff. The income tax thing, obviously, I think not only polls well, but I think would be favorable in the state as well. But some of the other things that just felt like hot button social issues. Those are things that the governor tried to avoid.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly the point I just wanted to make. The income tax thing, that's something Burgum campaigned on, something he believes in. That's a solid policy argument. The other stuff, like coming out and sort of draping yourselves in the clothes of culture warrior when the administration you were a part of, I remember watching video of the legislative floor and hearing some of the people pushing the culture war bills complaining about all the vetoes Burgum was issuing of some of those. Now, all his vetoes weren't culture war bills, and he did sign a couple of them. But for the most part, Burgum was not seen as an ally for that policy agenda. I think, and even when he signed some of them, one of the bills he signed was essentially, I think it was the pronoun bill, and I remember him defending it as saying, well, it was going to pass anyway. Not exactly a ringing endorsement of the policy. So, right. I just don't know how you bridge that gap from, we're culture war skeptical in office, but on the campaign trail, we're, putting on the armor and waving the lance and shield around, saying we're going to go get those liberals. I don't know.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting things, again, I think you and I have talked at length about where's Lieutenant Governor Miller's lane. I think based on this morning's announcement, she's going to try to go to the right of Kelly. The question becomes, is there space there with sort of the animosity between the Burgum administration and that far right wing of the Republican Party right now? I still think she has a difficult time sort of figuring out where her lane is and how does she get to 50% plus one in this primary when Kelly is sort of established himself over the last 2 or 3 weeks and has a relationship.
I mean, let's be fair. For all the complaining that we're doing about some of the early messaging in Miller's campaign, Kelly Armstrong's the guy who brought the impeachment, or what is it? He advanced the impeachment of Joe Biden, right? So how do you get to the right of that? I mean, you talk about what Joe Biden's a socialist. Yeah, Kelly Armstrong's working to impeach him in office. Now, you and I can have our feelings about that. I don't like Joe Biden as a president. I feel like the impeachment stuff has become gotcha politics. Yeah. But I mean, the thing is, in the context of a Republican primary, if it's a contest to see how much the candidate can dislike Joe Biden, I don't know how you get to Kelly Armstrong's right on that.
Well, and I also, I tried to make the point at the beginning that North Dakota is so dependent on federal dollars that I think it's hard to, cry the socialism thing when we're taking so much money and the North Dakota administration is taking so much money. At the same time, was the money spent on the bipartisan infrastructure bill that Kramer and Hoeven voted for? Is that socialist money?
Yeah.
How do you determine what money is socialist money and what money is worth going to the ribbon cutting on? I just think these, the generic attacks on the federal government, I know they work. I think they're dumb.
Yeah. Well, especially because I know that once in office, she will send out press releases because every Republican who has held office in the Senate, in Congress, in the governor's office have railed against federal spending and then routinely send out press releases bragging about, some co-op got $500,000 federal grant for broadband or something like that. I mean, it's you can't have it both ways. And the thing is, to me, that's not socialism. We have a federal government. We can have a debate about what the limits of federal spending should be. We certainly should be talking about the national debt because we're at a point where we're going to be spending more money servicing the national debt than we are on Medicare. But it has to be more than a campaign talking point. And some of the stuff about North Dakota takes 30% of its budget. Yeah, a lot of that's roads. I mean, we have a lot of roads through a lot of empty countryside. And I would argue it serves the whole country for North Dakota farmers to be able to get their crops to market on roads. And I know that's not your point. I'm just saying.
My point is we can't eliminate personal income taxes in the state of North Dakota without federal money.
Yeah, if we had to pay for all of our highways, we would not be able to. But every state is like that. I mean, every state would have to raise taxes if they didn't get federal money in their budgets. I don't know. The thing is, I wish I would really like to see a very nuanced, very in-depth policy debate between Kelly Armstrong and Tammy Miller, because I think that would be fascinating. I think it would serve our state well. I think it would serve the voters well. And I just don't think that's what we're going to get.
So, but what is from a policy difference? I mean, I think she sort of alluded to it that she's going to say she's in the private sector. Kelly is a career politician. You could see that sort of coming.
Here it comes.
You talked about some of the differences on the social issues, but I can't imagine there's a huge amount of light between the two of them when it comes to big policy things.
Yeah.
I mean, there may be things that Tammy's to the left of Kelly on, I would imagine.
Could be. I mean, the problem is we don't really know. Tammy was a CEO, a relatively low-profile CEO for as large a company as Border States is. A lot of voters probably, even though she's been the lieutenant governor for the last year, probably don't know her. Probably won't recognize the name. So, she's going to need to define herself to those people, and I just don't think we're going to hear a lot about that stuff. We're just not. And I don't know. I mean, as a absolutely ruthlessly pragmatic political point, the more she goes out on limbs and takes established positions on policies, probably the worse it is for her.
You're absolutely right. I mean, generic Republican without any points, without any like really strong positions either way. I mean, it's generally served people well in the state of North Dakota, right? I mean, we have workhorses in the Senate who generally don't get out on these controversial issues very much. So it does, especially when we're talking about 100 and some odd days until the primary election. It is probably the right political strategy, but I just wish we could have learned a little bit more through her statement beyond, Second Amendment. Well, yeah, I mean, we don't have to worry about losing the Second Amendment rights in North Dakota. Our Senate is 43-4, right? And so, yeah, I don't know. Maybe my expectations, maybe I'm still naive after my 48 years on this earth that I was hoping for.
We are probably, for people who have, I mean, the decades between us that we have working in politics in different capacities, you would think that we would be more cynical and less Pollyannish. There's probably staffers from Miller's campaign and Armstrong campaign listening to this, rolling their eyes, saying, right, listen to these two rubes think that this is what politics is about. And I'm sorry, I'm not going to let it go. I think it is what it should be about. Hey, we got a few minutes left. The other announcement today, Julie Fedorchak running for the United States House. She's making it official. Last week I knew she was calling around to donors. She had an FEC filing earlier this week that I wrote about. She's making it official. That's now on the Republican side, a three-way race between Rick Becker, Tom Campbell, and Fedorchak. Your thoughts on Fedorchak getting in?
Well, my first thought is I think these Republicans need to time their announcements better between the Monday with Burgum and Becker and Armstrong, and now both Miller and Fedorchak announcing today. No, I think she's going to be a strong candidate. I think that she's has an appeal that Campbell and Becker don't have. I think that she sort of fills in the more traditional Republican lane, but certainly is conservative.
Yeah.
I think she's obviously an expert on the number two largest industry in the state, and energy. I think that, and she's got experience working for Hoven and other folks, and she's not bombastic. She's not like, she's solid.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. When I wrote about it, I called Campbell a hobbyist, which I got a lot of emails about that, but I don't know how you announce that you're running for like every office, and then I don't know. I really like Tom Campbell. It just seems like he wants to join a social club sometimes.
Yeah, when you think about Tom Campbell, he's announced for every major office, but is yet to be on the ballot for any of the major offices that he's announced.
Yeah, he's run for governor, for House, and for Senate. So I mean, there's that. The interesting thing is, we just spent a bunch of time talking about, Tammy Miller. It's going to be all culture war all the time. Maybe. I mean, that's kind of the first inklings. But the thing is, like, kind of the knock on Becker is that he goes too far with that. Like, it's to the point where I think people look at his campaign and say, maybe we have enough angry people in Washington and we don't need another like Freedom Caucus type person in Washington. So I mean, that's kind of an interesting juxtaposition where it's like, it is possible to go too far down that road, even for North Dakotans.
But Rob, I mean, don't you think when you think about Congress, of the three personalities of the three candidates, Becker's the one who just fits right in at the beginning. Like, I think Fedorchak, I mean, she's smart, but she's pretty reserved. I mean, she's not going in there and throwing bombs. I don't think that's good for North Dakota to pick the one who fits in the most at Congress.
Fits in with this dysfunctional Congress that can't even. Yeah, exactly. I mean, we're talking about fitting in with a Republican caucus that struggles to elect its own leadership. I don't know that that's like we want more of that dysfunction. That's what we want. I think that's a vote for Rick Becker, right? I just don't see. I don't know. I mean, there is something to be said about that, and also I think there's always something when a Burgum or a Miller does it, that a lot of their stuff that they're doing is kind of tongue in cheek. I think, and I think Trump gets away with this too, right? Where there's just this sort of assumption that, yeah, that's what he's saying for the rubes, but when they're in the room where it happens, something else happens, right?
Rob, I appreciate your column where you sort of, called out the leadership of the Republican Party. Is this what you want? I think these guys, Miller included, but the congressional delegation as well, Burgum as well, have to own they have to own Trump now.
Yeah.
They have to own, they don't get to just pick and choose that he's better on energy and regulation. They have to own all of Donald Trump, not just the stuff that they like, if they think he should be the next president of the United States.
Well, I do. And Miller, again, I'm already getting texts from people saying, wow, she's really leaning into Trump. I wanted to ask her that question where she sent out the press release. Hours after Doug Burgum announces he's not running for a third term, Miller sends out the press release saying, I endorse Donald Trump for president 2024. Why was that important to do that at that point? And obviously she sees tapping into the MAGA base, the Trump base. And there's a reason why, I think John Hoeven or Kelly Armstrong endorsed Trump too. I think in a different world, they might not. I just feel like they have to, because that's what the Republican base wants. And that's who Miller's campaigning to right now. This whole gubernatorial, the primary race is all about the Republican base. So, that's what we're going to see. That's what we're going to get. I have a feeling that this race is going to get ugly. I feel like that. I'm hoping I'm wrong. I'm hoping that in 6 months we can say, boy, what an enlightening competition between two, very formidable, very, very respectable candidates. I just don't think that's what it's going to be.
Yeah, I agree. You don't get into this thing if you're Tammy Miller unless you're getting in to win it. And so I think it'll be an interesting few months. I do hope, like you, that we elevate the conversation beyond really generic talking points that frankly don't mean anything. I don't know what woke means these days. I just know. Well,
they give me a policy. If you want to campaign on that, then tell me what you're going to do. Is it more regulations for libraries? What are we doing? Is it more training for teachers? How are you going to? Put some meat on the bones, right? What does that mean?
Well, and that's like when we talk about parental rights. Does that mean that I, as a parent, get to go in and determine what's in the library at my kid's school and what's not in the library?
Right.
Because that's taking away parental rights from other people.
Right. Well,
I just think, again, it doesn't mean anything. It's just like a generic talking point. Everybody's for parental rights,
right?
For God's sake.
Well, because everybody's for their rights, and the problem they have is when their rights start bumping into other people's rights, and now we have to make policies to decide how do we accommodate all these rights. That's what all government is, right? My right to say what I want doesn't include my right to say it through a bullhorn in your driveway at 2:00 in the morning.
Right.
That's how we do it. Anyway, all right. Well, that's it. I'll tell you, I'm looking forward to the races, though. I will say, as a columnist, the person who gets to write about all this stuff, I'm going to be a very busy person. But I like it. I like it. I do wish. I don't want to. I'm not looking forward to spending a lot of time writing about culture war issues over the next 6 months.
It's going to be fun. Both are strong, formidable, qualified candidates. We'll see how this thing goes.
All right. Thanks for listening. Did you know Forum Communications Company has a robust podcast library? At inforum.com/podcasts, we have everything from politics, sports, true crime, outdoor adventure, and more. Visit inforum.com/podcasts and explore them all today.